anyway, I think this is probably pretty good because I can't see how I can make it bigger. Anyway, so you can see here from the schedule, we have prayers every single day from 6 to 7. 6 to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Everyone is invited to join. It is really a beautiful way of a reset every day, of dropping all earthly thoughts and communing with God and each other's. And then on Sundays, we have our meeting in the morning, and in the afternoon, we have a study session at 6:30. Again, all of this is Pacific Standard Time. It's all at this link, so it's very easy and straightforward. We're studying No Solar. And then Mondays, we have an internal meeting, healing meeting with us mediums. And then on Tuesday at 6:30, we have Initiation to Spiritism in collaboration with Divine Light, and that's based on the book by Teresina Oliveira. And then Wednesday, we study Heaven and Hell again at the same time. And then we also have a fraternal assistance. So please do reach out if you have anything you'd like to air out with one of us. And then on Thursdays, we're studying Living Spring again at the same time. And every second Thursday of each month, we have an in-person meeting, and that takes place in Sacramento, California. And then Friday and Saturday is prayer, and then we go back to Sunday. So I hope you will be able to join us. It's always a pleasure to open ourselves up to new ideas. And sometimes, even if we've heard it before, we know we're always different people, and it resonates in a different way, and it helps us to really allow the teachings to sink in deeper. So, but now I'm very excited to introduce our guest speaker today, and his name is Yuri Castro. Yuri Castro will be speaking on speech and silence. What a beautiful subject. Very exciting to learn more, Yuri. And I will also read your bio for a moment. First of all, welcome. Welcome, Yuri. So Yuri Castro is a licensed clinical psychologist specialized in the treatment of severe and persistent mental illness in adolescents and adults. He has been residing in Florida since 2013, is married, and has 2 sons. Yuri has been involved in Spiritism since an early age and started giving lectures in 2012. He's a volunteer at Conscious Living Spiritist Group in North Miami, Florida. Please help me to welcome Yuri. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you.
And before Yuri begins, I'm asking everyone, please to mute yourselves if you are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm able to share my screen, correct? Because I have a presentation here. Excellent. Yeah. Okay. Let me know if you guys can see this cover here.
Yeah.
Yes? Excellent. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for the invitation, especially Kiki, who reached out. It is an honor and a pleasure to be able to be here, to be talking about Spiritism, to be able to do this study and also share what I learned and what we all can learn and apply in our lives. Today's lecture is about speech and silence, or when to stay silent and when to speak up, basically, and especially in the world today where everything is so frantic and everything we say and do echoes not only with the closest people around us, but also can reach millions and even billions of people. So more than ever, whatever we do, whatever we say or don't say through silence is extremely important. And so the lecture today is about, bringing these questionings and seeing how Spiritism can help us with that. So to talk about speech, and for those who have not seen my lectures yet, I like to leave the source of the slide on the top right corner of the screen. So if you like what's written there, or if you want to go back and read it again, read it for yourself, which I definitely recommend, you have it in the top right, the source of the slide. So in this one, this is a book psychographed by Chico Xavier, by André Luiz. And this one is called Between Heaven and Earth. And then this book right here, André Luiz, Clarencio actually, took Andre Luis to meet Clara, who was an instructor in the spirit plane. And then at her very simple house, she was talking about the importance of the voice in the service of speech. So she said that speech, whatever it may be, invariably entails specific electrical energies, liberating rays of dynamic nature. The mind is the incessant generator of power through the positive and negative wires of the sentiment, and the thought thereby producing speech, which is an electromagnetic discharge regulated by voice. So she's giving a little bit of this idea, and Clarencia also touches upon this idea of what speech is and the importance of the voice in modulating, aka in the service of our speech. They go on and say that that is why in all our areas of activity, the voice modulates speech. This requires the purification of the inner life because speech, after the mental impulse, lies at the base of creation. Thanks to speech, people approach and adjust themselves to the work they're responsible for. And by means of voice, such work may be aided or retarded in space and time. So there's a couple of things for us to understand and explore here. It says that this requires the purification of the inner life. So they're talking about this purification of our inner tendencies, of the thoughts that we're producing, of the things that are coming out of us through our voice, through our speech. Because it's saying here, because speech, after the mental impulse, lies at the base of creation. Of course, through the teachings of Spiritism, we are constantly reminded of the power of our thoughts. We know now that our thoughts, they can create, they can destroy, they can modulate on their own, but the speech is something that comes after the thoughts and is expressing that thought or that sentiment, that feeling, therefore lies at the base of creation. That's what they're saying there. And it says here as well, people approach and adjust themselves to the work they're responsible for. And by means of voice, such work may be aided or retarded in space and time, because we may progress, we may regress, we may halt our own progress, depending on how we use our tools. The tools that we have are at our disposal. And speech, our voice, the words that come from our mouths, they are one of these tools that we have at our disposal, which also brings attention to the fact that this is why it's so hard to hold our tongues oftentimes, because the thoughts are very, very quick. Our thoughts, our minds, they work relentlessly and very, very quick. I'll give an example. I'll ask you guys right now to control your thoughts, and I don't want anybody thinking of a polar bear. Nobody thinks of a polar bear right now. Don't imagine the white fur, how much feel in your hand, and all of that. And I know you guys all being like spiritists and being good, nobody thought of a polar bear, right? And here's why it's so hard to control our thoughts, and the speech can sometimes, and our voices can come very, very fast. Moreover, this is a book from the Living Spring collection. Unfortunately, we don't have that in English yet, but this is a message number 97, talking about how the verb can create. So the idea here, it says in Emmanuel, this is psychographed by Chico, said that what comes out of the heart and mind through the mouth is a living, throbbing force involving the creature for good or evil, depending on the nature of the emission. Coming out of the heart and mind, meaning the thoughts and the feelings / emotions, is a living, throbbing force, meaning our voices, they are living, throbbing force that involves the creature for good or for evil, depending on the nature, meaning depending on that inner life that we spoke about the previous slide. It's going to involve the creature for that. The same way we can curse somebody when we're feeling very, very angry and involving them in an energy that's not so good, that's a bit destructive perhaps. There's also a way to involve them in good energies through our speech whenever we're doing, let's say, a prayer, whenever we're talking to someone and we're giving words of comfort. The psychic elements that we externalize through our mouths are powers acting on our behalf, active factors that act on our responsibility. So the idea that this is all our responsibility. What we say, what comes through our mind, our mouths, This is all our responsibility. Leon Denis, in this book called The Problem of Life and Destiny, is going to talk about our feeble language. And this is what he says: the soul, in its deep intuitions, may have the sensation of the infinite things in which it participates and to which it aspires. But it would seek in vain to express them with the rudiments of our feeble human language. In vain would it strive to translate eternal things into the poor language of the earth. He says then, the word would be impotent, yet our evolved consciousness is capable of perceiving the subtle radiations of higher life. So he's talking about that the soul in its deep intuitions have an idea of this infinite things, of this immortality of the soul, of our part in the creation, our part, and in advancing ourselves and our planets. But it would seek in vain, he says, to express them with the rudiments of our feeble human language and trying to translate. And as many different authors who psychograph books, they Chico, Yvonne, Divaldo, they mention time and time again how hard it is sometimes to translate into words. And they're psychographing it, they're receiving that what they were shown. Yvonne talks a lot about that. Yvonne Pereira, she talks a lot about how she saw, like they showed her these sceneries, but she couldn't translate them to language. Yes, because at the point that we are in our own evolution as humans, our language is feeble. And it's the same way that if you ask for a 4-year-old to explain the theory of relativity, like they're not going to be able to, or to give you a reach description, they're not going to be able to. But it's not because it's not there. It's because of the limits that we still have upon us. Our verb, this is the chapter 24, a message from Emmanuel, psychographed by Chico, from the Book of Hope. Also, we don't have that book in English, I don't think. It talks about words, our verb, and it says, words are agents in the construction of all the buildings of life. The verb is the light of life, which Jesus himself used to bequeath to us the renewing gospel. Bequeath, like an older word perhaps, this means to give or to leave by, to hand out. In everyday work, be it as natural as the simple bread on the table, so our words, okay? In the effective exchanges, let us use it as pure water. In serious moments, let us do it like the surgeon's scalpel, which prudently limits itself to the incision in a diseased area without unnecessary blows. On sad days, let us consider it an efficient remedy, without deviating from the dosage. In all, Emmanuel, so great at always giving us these comparing contrast or making these analogies with things that we can grasp. And he's talking about these, in everyday work, in effective exchanges, in serious moments, on sad days. So he's giving us basically a blueprint on how to use our words wisely and mindfully. So in every day, as natural as a simple bread, in the effective exchanges, as pure water, in serious moments, meaning, let's say, in an argument or whenever we're faced with adversity and a difficulty that we're trying to handle with someone, he said the word surgeon's scalpel. So use the word scalpel, which is a very, very precise tool, that goes straight where it needs to be in the diseased area. Let our words be like that. And on sad days, a remedy to those who need it, an efficient remedy without deviating from the dosage, because too much of the dosage also can be harmful. And whenever we're talking about speech, so we're producing speech, it's coming from our thoughts, our feelings, our minds, from us to outside. We got to remember that our actions have consequences, and we are responsible for those consequences. We are responsible for what we produce, for our speech. The law of action and reaction is immutable. Those around us are attracted to us based on how we behave and based on the things that we do, how we act, how we say, what we're saying, what we're not saying as well. So the idea here is, and this is something that Spiritism has brought so well into light, the idea of the invisible world. And how much it influences us. And, you know, question 459, perhaps a famous question, I'd say, from the Spirits book, where the spirits were asked how much we're influenced, you know, by the spirits. And they said their influence upon us is greater than we suppose, is greater than we imagine. So the idea is, whenever we're speaking, whenever we're externalizing our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, is not just to the people that we can see around us, is also to those that we cannot see. And so the first question, I guess, a reflection I bring to everyone here is, how are we using our words? What sort of company are we keeping that we're not even aware of? Through the use of our word, through the use of the things that we're saying and doing, who are we keeping company? And when we go to the gospel according to Spiritism, it talks about the overuse of speech. And it says here, if we did not exceed the limit of what is necessary for the satisfaction of our needs, we would not have the sicknesses which are provoked as a consequence of these excesses, nor would we experience the vicissitudes which derive from them. So he's talking about here about exceeding the limit of what is necessary for our needs, for the satisfaction, meaning to meet our true needs. And the overuse of speech can also cause, like I said, these consequences, can also cause these vicissitudes that we experience because we are overusing it. If we put a limit on our ambitions, we would not have to fear ruin. This is what they're continuing saying. If we did not desire to raise ourselves higher than we are able, we would not have to be afraid of falling. If we were humble, we would not suffer the deception of hurt pride. If we practiced the law of charity, we would not be slanderers, jealous, or envious, and so would avoid arguments and fights. So the word slander obviously closely tied to what we're talking today about, the overuse or misuse of speech, of our words. And they're already connecting here our words, whatever it is that we're saying, with the law of charity. And nowadays, we have to be careful about everything, because again, our words can reach millions. But even in the confines of our own houses, remember, there's the whole world that we don't see, and then it's harder to have access to that, but it's there. So what are we doing? What sort of TV shows, reality shows, or talks, or gossips, whatever it is, what is it that we're doing when perhaps nobody's watching? Or perhaps, what are we thinking? How are we externalizing our speech? And in terms of the words, the impact of words, we have Humberto de Campos, a spirits author. He brings to us a passage in which Jesus observed that the apostles were bickering a little bit here and there. They were like talking bad things about one another, or criticizing. That person didn't like what that one had to say. That person didn't like what that one did. So they were doing all of that. So he gathered all of them, and he told them of a parable, as Jesus so wisely spoke in parables, so the light of knowledge didn't blind us back then, and didn't blind them back then. But one of these parables he talked about was about this nation, and that he said that was blessed by the good spirit, with capital G and capital S, the good spirit, after prayers, and how their harvest in this village grew and blossomed and everything. So they expanded. The villagers, they got the villagers, they got richer and happier, and everything was great. But when that happened, they went ahead and they decided to go and humiliate their neighbors who weren't having the same luck with their wishes, perhaps, and they were not growing their crops so much. So they went and they started to humiliate them. And what happened was that a war ensued, and they had their crops burned, their harvest burned, neighbor murdering neighbor, and all of that. So Jesus brought that parable to them, and he says, a phrase of encouragement and kindness is a ray of light capable of lifting an entire nation, but a disturbing sentence can lead people to ruin. So he said that in truth, the action comes from the arms, but the direction always comes from the thought through the tongue. So he was talking to the disciples, to his followers, about the importance of the words that we were saying, and in using that speech, like he's saying that as a ray of light, as an act of kindness, capable to lift an entire nation, and not the misuse of speech that can lead people to ruin. In the message 73, it's called chatter or yapping in this book, psychographed by Chico, by Emmanuel as well, Book of Messages. It says this: let us not forget, however, the evil chatter that always forms around us, an immense family of sick or degrading elements, like lethal worms that proliferate in silence and operate in the shadows. Rare people, Emmanuel is saying this, rare people meditate on this. Isn't the unruly verb the father of slander, gossip, frivolity, and disturbance? God created the word and man created the talk. And he says, if alcohol intoxicates the vicious, destroying their energy, what about the misguided tongue of good that destroys vigorous sowings of happiness and wisdom, love, and peace? Again, Emmanuel with these amazing analogies that we would understand. He's even talking about alcohol intoxicating and all of that, the destructive power of that. But he's turning that attention into speech. How are we using that tool? Isn't there unruly verb the father of slander, gossip, frivolity, all of that? So once again, we are warned through these beautiful messages about the importance of what we say, how we say. And if we go to the Holy Bible, about slander and judgment, we have Matthew, a few passages in Matthew, and I brought a few here that said, for in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. So, because back then, they were very concerned in the Judaism about what they were eating. So Jesus was saying it's not what goes into someone's mouth, he said at some point, that defiles them, but what comes out of them, meaning the speech, meaning our words. That is what defiles the person, not necessarily what they're putting inside, what they're eating. And in James, we have anyone who speaks ill of a brother speaks ill of the law and judges the law. And if you judge the law, you're no longer a follower of the law, but a judge. We found this in James. So the idea here is the same. How are we using our words? Are we using them to judge? How are we judging others? Because if we're judging, we're not observers, we're judges. And we can't be, because we aren't. Only God is the judge. Still on the importance, as we are, invited to reflect on the importance of our words and slander. I brought this little story. It's a fictional story, but for us to reflect. And there was this village, and in this village there was this woman who was very prone to slander. She liked to gossip, liked to do this and that. And one day she heard about this sage, this other woman, very wise, and then she said, I want to become a better person. So she went to talk to the sage. What do I need to do to become a better person? I want to, stop gossiping. I want to just improve myself. And the other woman, the wise one, she said, I'm going to need you to do something, two things. The first thing I need you to do is I need you to go grab a burlap sack or a sack of some sort, and I want you to collect feathers. Could be geese feathers, birds feathers, whatever that may be. And I want you to grab all those feathers and collect them into a sack until the sack is really full.
Did we lose him?
I got frozen.
Yep. Let me let him know.
Bump on his back. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I found this very interesting presentation, very powerful.
Yeah, excellent. A lot of specifics. Mm.
I think he's touching a nerve that one area that we don't reflect so much is about this, uh, what comes out of our mouths reflects what we have in our heart. So the inner reform proposed by Spiritism is exactly that call. That's where we need to work on, not the external, not the outside.
Yeah, and I think too, also when you pay attention to your thoughts, it gives you a little bit more time about what could come out of your mouth. You know, because that's the other thing they ask us to do is watch your thoughts.
Reflect before we speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all of that is coming together in this presentation to me.
And even if we don't speak any unconscious thoughts, they're still in the space. It's like the noisy silence, right? So it really
That's-
starts our thoughts.
Yeah, that is so perfect, Sunshine, because we have other forms of language, right? Not just the verb, but the visual, the gestures, and all
Yeah.
that.
Just the mental chatter, right? And the spirits, they hear that too. It all goes out.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think too, the consciousness of it, you know, if you become more conscious, you can find a way to work on it. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
To become the observer, right, of ourselves, our thoughts and words.
Just so you know, he's starting his computer because for him it shows that he's connected, but you know, he's not. So he's starting his computer and he should be back in a minute.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
while he's, go ahead, sister.
Teresa, you wanted to say something.
Well, yeah, and I'm saying this jokingly, but I always think of that little verse he mentioned about the Bible, about it's more important what comes out of out of a man's mouth and what goes in. And so I always feel like, can we compensate? Like, you know, eat a lot of chocolate, but then say nice things. It's just joking, but
Good thought, yes.
and Gina, what is with you're kind of like zooming in and out? What's Oh, okay. That's interesting. I was like, ooh.
You know, I also enjoyed when he said God created the word and man the talk, right?
Yeah.
And
I
what do-
loved that.
yeah, that is
Yeah,
just
the verb. Yeah, the verb is God created the universe through the verb, the words.
yeah. There he is. It's coming.
Teresa, that's that massage I got.
Hello?
Machine behind me.
Hi, Yuri.
Oh my
Really?
God, I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. I mean, I had internet, but my Zoom just shut down.
Yeah, no worries.
Can you all hear
Don't-
me fine?
We
We
can
hear
hear
you.
Okay, let me see what's happening with the camera. Oh, there we go.
There you
Okay, woof.
go. Welcome
We're
back.
back, guys. We're back. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
It's not
Can we-
you.
The phone, I said I have internet. Let me restart my computer. Let's see if that helps. All right, back here. So what was the last thing you guys heard? I'm so sorry.
What was it?
you were saying the parable, and someone was saying to the other person to go
Yes, grab the
put
feathers.
bag, yeah, with the feathers. Yeah.
Yes. Oof. All right. So what happened was the woman, went and grabbed the feathers that the sage told her to get and go. And the sage said, okay, now you go to the summit of that mountain, of the mountain that we have in our village on a windy day. And I want you to empty that sack, spread all those feathers. Can you guys see my screen, by the way?
No,
It's all
It's
white.
just-
no?
Yeah, it's all white. We can
Okay,
see,
okay,
but it's
good.
all right.
So then she went and one day she didn't know, she collected all the feathers, she went to the top of the mountain, and then when she was there, she spread all the feathers. All the feathers went each in one direction, the wind carried them all and all of that. She didn't understand the purpose of that exercise. So she went back to the sage, and the sage said, she's like, okay, I went and I did what you asked me to do, gather the feathers, I spread them out in the wind, and she's like, but I'm missing the point. How is that's gonna make me a better person? And the sage said, okay, now what I want you to do is the second part of the exercise. I want you to grab that same sack and go there and grab all the feathers you threw in the wind. And the woman laughed and said, that's impossible. I don't even know where, like, some of them, or they fell close, but most of them went in directions I have no idea. And the sage said, and that's the same thing with your words. Your words have impacts that you will not know. You never know where they're going to land. You never know how they're going to land, just like the feathers. And once you throw those in the wind, forget about getting them back. So that was the message of this little, like, fictional parable, fictional story, where the sage was explaining exactly the purpose of us being cognizant of our words and how we cannot get them back and we don't know where they're going to land. On the book Living Spring, psychographed by Chico, dictated by Emmanuel, the message 151, it's going to say, kindness is not always appropriate in the circle of loyal conversations. Sometimes, he says, a clarifying discussion requires serene yet decided forcefulness. Nevertheless, great care in regard to comments made afterwards is indispensable. Slander lies in wait for sincerity in order to muddy its water and neutralize its effort. Malice does not deserve the crown of serious conversations. Giving it too much importance in conversations actually enlarges its sphere of action. Of course, because everything we focus expands, the good and the bad. The good words, the rays of light, as Jesus said, but also those that can cause destruction, even if we're not aware in that moment. Even if we just think, oh, it's just going to say this, yeah, and like it's not going to have an impact. We never know. Joanna said even that, Joanna De Angelis, the benefactor of Divaldo, and she says this slander is a culture of uselessness on rotten soil. How strong that is. The culture of uselessness on rotten soil. To curse means to destroy, she says. And then we're talking about speech. We're talking about how to say things. Is there a practical guideline for that? And yes, there is. Thankfully, our friend Socrates, all that time ago, he created what he called the triple filter. And it's honestly what motivated me when I learned about this many years ago to do this lecture, to create this study, to align that with Spiritism and bring that to you guys. He said that before we say anything, we must pass, or whatever we're gonna say must pass the triple filter test. We must ask what we're about to say. Is it true? Is it good? And is it useful? If what we're about to say can pass the triple filter test, he says you may say it. So again, is it true? Is it good? And is it truly useful? Because oftentimes we'll see that we have 2 out of 3 when we have, for instance, we want to say something that is true. Yeah, I'm gonna criticize that person. It's true. They're erring in their path. It's useful because I want them to, like, correct. But how is my delivery? Is that really good? And among other examples you guys can think of as well. But the idea here, and I love this, is it true? Is it good? Is it useful? And if it doesn't pass that test, then he says, then don't say it. So if we're not saying it, what are we doing then? We're becoming silent. We're using silence as a tool, and silence is very, very hard to truly achieve, even nowadays, like I said, with the frantic pace that we live our lives. Chico, he had this story, great story about what he called the water of peace. He called it the water of peace. He said, okay, whenever somebody irritates you in the middle of a conversation, take a glass of water, fill it, drink a little, and keep some of the water in your mouth. Do not throw away or swallow the water that's in your mouth. And he says, while the temptation to respond lasts, let the water bathe your tongue. And he says, this is the water of peace. It's a simple solution to grab a glass of water whenever we're feeling heated, whenever we feel like whatever we're going to say is definitely not going to pass the Socrates test. Grab that water, put it in your mouth, because if we have the water in our mouth, we can't speak. And oftentimes that 1 second of hesitation, that 2 seconds of hesitation is what's necessary for us not to throw words that we're going to regret. So we're exercising silence with the water of peace solution. Then we go to the Spiritist book. Then we're talking about silence. Question 772 then is silence. They say it's important to be quiet and be silent and all of that. What it is to be thought of the vow of silence prescribed by certain sects from the very earliest times. And then they answer, you should either ask yourselves whether speech is in nature and why God has given it. Interesting. That answer is already enough to me. But they go on and said, God condemns the abuse, not the use of the faculties he has given. Sorry, of the faculties he has given. Silence, however, is useful, for in silence you'll have fuller possession of yourself. Your spirit is freer and can then enter into more intimate communication with us, the spirits. But a vow of silence is an absurdity. So they're talking about the extremes, you know, vow of silence. I'm never going to speak again. I'm going to live a very recluse life. It defeats the purpose of the law of society. If we all needed to live isolated to evolve, then each of us here would have a cave, a mountain, a beach of some sort and be secluded and not live in society. That's not the case, and that's not going to be the case. So they're saying here, it's not the use of the silence, but it's not the use of the words, but the abuse of them that they're talking. Happy Silence, Happy Life. In the book Happy Life, psychographed by Divaldo, dictated by Joanna De Angelis, we have 2 messages. We have number 23, says, express your ideas calmly. If the other person disagrees, remain silent and give him or her over to time, which teaches us all unhurriedly in the time of God. Not in our time, not how fast we want things to happen and unfold and be solved, but in the true time. Number 25, when asked about another person, this is interesting. Look, always give positive feedback. If this is not possible because the person acts reprehensibly, keep silent or speak benevolently. Remember the triple filter? Avoid aggravating his or her situation or making it more well known. You are not an overseer of other people's behaviors. You cannot know if yesterday's offender might now be in recovery. So let your opinions always be uplifting and your words helpful. That's what Joanna is saying to us. This is big because we're not an overseer of other people's behavior and we don't know what they're going through for us to be able to speak so freely and so truthfully, but sometimes without the good piece of the filter. Whatever, and this is from The Harvest of Light. Well, unfortunately, we also don't have this book in English, I don't think. It's psychographed by Chico. It says here at message number 6, called In Yourself, it says this. Whatever difficulty you find yourself in, refrain from carrying the burden of afflictions and unresolved questions. Penetrate the silence of your own soul. Listen to the thoughts that come from your own being, and you will recognize that the fundamental solution to all of life's problems will come from yourself. It is in this silence, this meditative state, this true silence that we so rarely engage in, I'm gonna dare say here, that we can find, it says here, the silence of our soul. We can penetrate our problems, penetrate the silence of our souls, and find the problems, the solutions to that within ourselves. Because if we think about it, it's also through a mindful silence, a purposeful silence, that we can connect more easily with God, our creator. We can connect more easily with our spirits, mentors or benefactors, all of those who want to help us and guide us. In the book Intervals, also by Chico, says here, in the silence of the spirit, the thoughts of heaven illuminate the thoughts of earth, and benevolent and wise voices speak to our ears through the inarticulate verb of inspiration. It is through the silence, or when we are in silence, that these wise voices can speak to us. Jesus also highlighted prudence and consideration, pointing out the richness of silence, which it is up to us to use in the struggles of life in favor of the success of our own tasks. But why is it so hard to be silent? Because I think most of us can agree, I'm going to dare say, that it's hard to be silent, that it's hard to shut up sometimes, that it's hard not to respond, or it's hard even to become recluded with ourselves and just be silent. Just be silent, because we're still evolving. We're still shaping our minds, our emotions, our spirits. In the silence, much like patience, requires practice. It's a skill. It's something that we're going to learn not to speak so imprudently, not to speak so, in anger, not to act or use our words as weapons instead of using them as a manual, so wisely said, as the surgeon's scalpel in difficult situations. Many people, this is message number 49 from the book Happy Life, relish in spreading bad news. Be very discreet with them. They will test your resolve with gossip, and in such circumstances, silence is the cotton that dampens the noise of the spread of growing evil. And to end this lecture today, I brought this poem here called The Melody of Silence by Mei, psychographed by Chico, and I dare not paraphrase it, so I want to read it to you guys. This is what she says. Notice the melody of silence in the divine creations. In heaven, everything is harmony without ostentation of strength. The sun shining without noise, the worlds in movement without disorder, the constellations shining without dazzling us. And on earth, everything signals the music of silence, exalting God's infinite love. The seed germinating without fuss, the wounded tree preparing fruit that feeds without revolt, the water that hides in the heart of the fountain today to quench your thirst tomorrow. What articulated words would define their greatness? That is why the Lord also helps us through circumstances that do not speak, through time, the mute sage. Do not break the melody of silence, where your phrase would sound at odds with the law of love that governs our path. Help without noise wherever you go. Remember the celestial Father's unlimited patience with our faults, and let us help without fuss our companion on his earthly pilgrimage, which many times only awaits the help of our silence in order to rise to the community with the divine. Thank you so much for the time here today. I hope this has contributed, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time for another one of these.
Yuri, thank you so much. Fantastic. And what an amazing moment that you're giving this talk. So much is happening in the world, and I think our minds like to not shut up about it with our own opinions. So what I really, really heard is the responsibility we carry, and because there will be consequences, right? So this is not to be taken lightly, what we're thinking and what we're saying. And the other thing that really deeply resonated with me is when you quoted someone, I forgot who it was, God created the word and man the talk. So there is the words are not ever unconscious. It's just how do we use them and when do we use them, right? And how do we put the words together? So there comes then our personal responsibility again. And lastly, there's so much, but I don't want to, say too much. I want to be silent. So anyway, but I did want to add, when you said that all solutions, I think it was in Emmanuel and Sefer Deleuze, he said that all solutions to life's problems will come from ourselves, and to run every thought through these three gateways, I want to say, and to remember to not get stuck on the outside and expect a miracle. It's from the inside out, and it starts with our thoughts. So thank you. Thank you so much. I'm deeply moved by your talk.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yuri, thank you so much. And I love the triple filter. I use it frequently. And I have to say, I once heard a man offer a fourth item in a Spiritist center, which I have found incredibly helpful. And that is, does it need to be me to say it? Because we can often come with the great eye and let me show you how much I know. And that has really, it's been a good practice of humility. Like, and also, you know, people do not necessarily learn from words, you know, unless they buy in. It's not like we share some words and we set people straight. That's not typically really how it happens anyway. Like Sunshine, you guys just said, it's inside. But thank you very much. I think it's such a good thing to kind of ponder and contemplate the different levels of that. And I will share my mother. She was raised in the South, and you know, it's not to bias anybody, but you know, they're common, you know, they didn't sit around watching TV, they sat around gossiping about people. And it was in some ways like a harmless thing. It was just what they did. And so I grew up with, you know, a lot of this, and it really irritated me all the time. And it was interesting. Later in life, my mother experienced 2 strokes, and they both affected her speech. So she did not die from the strokes, but she never really fully recovered her speech. And I always thought, you know, looking at that through the Spiritist perspective, kind of, you know, about cause and effect. So I think your message was really powerful. And just lastly, I'll say, I know in one of Joanna D'Angelis' books, she talks about how silence is, it's hard to teach and it's hard to learn because it's silent. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Charles. I was just gonna say one thing. Sam Francis, he said, preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words. And I think that is kind of what you're referring to there as well, when for us to think about the silence and the actions.
yeah, your presentation also reminds me of the principle of responsibility. It's right on it. It's speaking right to that core. It's about responsibility. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Yuri or comments?
Yes, I
Okay.
wanted to thank for this nice presentation, and I wish that it was a subject in the school for students, for the future political and the people who come to work and they want to guide the people, and for everybody is really necessary to learn how to use the word. Hitler did the word to destroy the world, and Gandhi used the word to get independent for Indian. That is powerful. Thank you very much for this subject. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if there is no one else stepping forth, then once again, Yuri, fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been recorded, so we can always go back and revisit all the different quotes, which is another very powerful way of presenting a talk. I really enjoy getting even books that are not in English yet, from books that are not in English yet. So thank you for all of that too. And you're invited to stay on. We're going to take a 2-minute break and we're going to do a healing meditation. And Shall we take 2 minutes? And I think somebody is going to stop the live stream, right?